Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get fired up for another electrifying edition of Fourth and Frames. I'm your host, Chris Battistel, and I'm here with my dynamic duo of co-hosts, Rhett Manuel and Drew Scott. We are ready to bring the heat as we dive in deep to our top 12 quarterback and tight end rankings. So buckle up and get ready with us because we're about to deliver another nonstop high energy episode that'll leave you on the edge of your seat. Let's get it. Before we jump into it, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and hammer that bell to get notified whenever the Fantasy and Frames Network drops new content. And most importantly, rate and review the podcast. And as always, give a warm welcome to the wizard behind the glass, the maestro of our shows, the one and only Gator J. Drew, the NFL has released its full schedule. Which game are you looking forward to the most, brother?
So I'm a Rams fan that lives only 2 hours away from St. Louis. So going to Rams games used to be much more simple for me. It's not the case anymore with them moving to LA. So for me, the easy answer is always the Rams games that are closest for me to be able to drive to. So this year, that's week 3 in Cincinnati, week 4 in Indianapolis. There's only like about a 4.5-hour drive. So very doable. I went to the Rams Indy game in Indy a couple years ago, beautiful stadium. Probably go back again. Fingers crossed they start Anthony Richardson early on, and I can see him play too. So from just a fan perspective, that's the easy answer. Now, as far as from a fantasy perspective, I think this is probably the easy answer, the popular answer, but championship week in fantasy, week 17, we got the Chiefs and the Bengals, and you just know that there's going to be so many fantasy championships that are determined by the players in that matchup, and best ball lineups are going to be relying on that matchup. It's a locked and loaded fantasy game that's on fantasy championship week, so it's tough to beat.
Yes, sir. Chiefs Bengals is going to be a banger of a game championship weekend. Rhett, any game stand out to you that could be potential fantasy football absolute point producers?
Muted.
There it is. He was so excited that we took the words right out of his mouth, man. He's hyped up for the fantasy season. We'll get back to Rhett as soon as he joins the channel. I'm excited to hear what he has to say about the schedule. But let's dive into some fantasy football hot topics. Drew, we got some big news. Oh, we got Rhett back.
Oh,
Rhett,
yeah, he's here.
Welcome back.
Yeah, we're gonna have to fight through these technical issues tonight.
Yeah, we're having some technical difficulties for sure
tonight. But yeah,
any of the games stand out for you fantasy wise, brother?
Yeah, I saw 5 games on the slate that were really standing out to me in terms of what would be awesome fantasy bangers. First off, let's start week 4 and go as the season goes on. Miami and Buffalo, 2 explosive offenses: Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, this Dalton Kincaid hype, Josh Allen, put it all together. 2 defenses that were so-so last year. You're probably looking for a lot of fantasy points in that one. Then moving into week 5, Minnesota and Kansas City. Once again, big-time offenses, so-so defenses, big fantasy points. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Jefferson, Kadarius Toney, Dalvin Cook if he's there, Jordan Addison emergence. All these things are going on, man. Then we're going to move into week 10. By this point, you're looking at your fantasy season is heating up. And in there, I'm looking at the Detroit Lions. By this time, we should have a very good idea as to what Jameson Williams will or won't be against the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert, all these different guys. We'll see where that goes. Then, week 11, Cincinnati and Baltimore, Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson. Do I really need to say anything more in terms of that one? And then in week 14, Philadelphia and Dallas. By this time, we're getting into the playoff season. You've got these 2 prolific offenses. We know offenses are what it's about in fantasy. So right as the playoffs are firing up, we get these two doozies and two of the better offenses in the league. Should be a good time in that one as well.
Yes, sir. I'm excited that fantasy football is right around the corner. Now, you mentioned Dalvin Cook there, possibly still with the Minnesota Vikings, but there has been reports that Dalvin Cook by June 1st is going to get released by those Vikings. So, Rhett, tell me the best possible and then worst possible spot for Dalvin Cook's potential team.
All right, so if we're going to talk about a best potential landing spot, let's start off by talking about Buffalo, which we previously mentioned in the last segment. First off, Dalvin Cook gets to hang with his little brother James. They have a good time. They're going to play two of the strengths. Dalvin's the runner. James is the DJ. You know, we got the running back. We got the pass-catching running back. These two are working together in great harmony. They combine into the ultimate Cook of a running back and turn Buffalo into even more of a potential Super Bowl contender. As for the worst fit, let's stay in that division. And based off of their actions this offseason, I would say we are talking about the New York Jets. We've seen them make the Aaron Rodgers splash. Now, does this look like the exact type of move that they might make? Absolutely. They've been about all these splashes. But then throw Dalvin Cook into an offense with Breece Hall, and then all of a sudden, both of those guys' values happen to be diminished. So in terms of fantasy values, that would be a terrible fit for both of those, bring both of those guys down, especially in a redraft format, which we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I love the Buffalo landing spot for Dalvin Cook. Other hot news amongst the fantasy football landscape, Denver head coach Sean Payton stated early last week that Javonte Williams should be ready for camp. Drew, what are your overall expectations for Javonte?
Yeah, so honestly, I thought that I was going to be out on Javonte, but I looked at his recent underdog ADP, and right now he's going as running back 28. Now, I think that pretty fairly bakes in the concerns you should have with Javonte should you decide to take a shot on him. So I think we can look at J.K. Dobbins had a pretty similar injury last offseason. He tore his ACL, LCL, and meniscus in the 2021 preseason, and he needed about 13 months to get back. Now, Javonte tore his ACL, LCL, and PCL in his knee on October 2nd. So Sports MD Analysis on Twitter, who is a great follower for fantasy players if you're not already, he just put out on May 9th that he has major skepticism about week 1 readiness with optimism for week 8 and beyond. So, we also got to remember that Dobbins was, quote unquote, ready for camp as well, but he did very basic drills. And although he got on the field before this, he really didn't start looking like himself until around week 14 or 15 of last season. So even if Javonte is ahead of schedule compared to Dobbins, I'm still not as optimistic that he'll be ready to go week 1. And I do also think it's noteworthy that Sean Payton went out and signed Samaje Perine. And Perine was quoted saying that Sean Payton was very upfront with his plans for using Perine, referencing his history of using multiple backs and his time in New Orleans. So once Javonte does come back, he'll be a running back that won't be starting the season healthy, and he'll be in a committee once he is healthy. So I think his value right now is fair in redraft, and honestly, with the hit that his dynasty value has taken during all this time, he might also be turning into a buy in dynasty. But at redraft, I really don't have a problem taking Javonte where he's at right now. There's a handful of running backs that are going just ahead of him that I'd rather have, but as far as the running backs going after him, there's not a lot of them to get too excited about, so I don't mind the price.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy, and I know this term gets used kind of a lot during the season, but he's that running back based on his skill that could potentially be that league winner for you if he starts off slow at the beginning of the year. If he starts on the pup, that value is going to drop for him. So, and if he comes on second half of the year and Denver really utilizes what he can do on the football field, he could be that ultimate league winner for you. I love it. Other fantasy football news: Matt Ryan has officially signed with CBS to be an on-air talent, spelling out that his career in the NFL is all but over. He's going to be working games and doing some analyst stuff there. And also, I think Hunter Renfrow is out on the Raiders. So look for Hunter Renfrow to land in somewhere new for that. But that's it for fantasy football hot topics. It is a slow time in the football season for news. So whenever we get some big stuff like that impact your fantasy football landscape, we are more than happy to talk about those kind of items. But let's get into why we're here. Let's jump into these quarterbacks. We're going to rank our top 12. I'll roll first. We'll go 12 to 7. And if you missed our running back and wide receiver rankings that we did last week, just go back to the YouTube channel, find those rankings there. You'll be able to watch that show. It's on Spotify. You'll be able to listen to it. And then go find us on Twitter as well, at Drew3MR, at FFChrisB, at RManuel Sports, and at Fourth and Frames. We've posted the graphics that go along with those rankings. But let's get into the quarterbacks here. At 12, I got Tua Tagovailoa. At 11, a player that neither of you guys have in your top 12, which kind of surprises me considering the weapons that he has around him. And that's Kirk Cousins. At 10, I got Trevor Lawrence. 9, I got Deshaun Watson. 8, Dak Prescott. And 7, I got Justin Fields. Drew, give me what you got.
So at 12, I also have Tua. 11, I've got Daniel Jones. 10, I've got Geno Smith. 9, I've got Dak Prescott. And then at 8, I've got Justin Herbert. And at 7, I've got Trevor Lawrence. And I will say I had Kirk Cousins in my top 12 up until about like 36 hours ago, maybe. He just barely got pushed out, and I didn't feel good about it because, I mean, if you look at the last couple of years, Kirk has been that consistent, top 12 guy, and then they added Jordan Addison to the offense, so like it doesn't feel good put him out of it. I think it's easy to, though, because he's not as exciting as some of the other names. He doesn't have the rushing upside of some of the other names, but he's been so consistent that it's hard to leave him outside of that top 12. So I can't blame you for having him in there, and I almost feel bad for not having him in there.
Anyone that puts tinfoil on their grill deserves to be not out of your top 12. Rhett, while we got you, give us your bottom 6, brother.
All right, QB 12, I have Geno Smith. QB 11, Daniel Jones. QB 10, Dak Prescott. QB 9, Justin Fields. QB 8, Sean Watson. And QB 7, Trevor Lawrence of Duval.
Great set of quarterbacks there. Now, Drew, no Deshaun Watson in your top 12. Given his ability to rush the ball as well as his above average abilities in the passing game, where do you have him slotted? And is he a player you could see finish as a QB1?
Yeah, so I absolutely think he could finish as a QB1. I have him as QB14 right now, behind the guys I mentioned, and then Kirk Cousins is QB13. So he is just outside of that top 12, him and Kirk both. So, yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities at all. I mean, like you mentioned, he's got the rushing upside, and we've seen him be an elite level passer in Houston. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still at least a little bit spooked with what I saw in Cleveland last year. If you look at just weeks 13 through 18, which were the weeks that Watson started last season, among quarterbacks with at least 100 snaps, he was 30th in completion percentage, 28th in yards per attempt. And he also wasn't good under pressure, coming in at 27th in pressure completion percentage and quarterback rating while under pressure. And on top of that, we know that Cleveland loves to feed Nick Chubb, which led to them being 22nd in the league in terms of pass plays per game. And, speaking of rushing, the one thing we didn't have to worry about last year is the rushing upside is still there for Watson in the small sample of games that we had. He was 4th among quarterbacks in rushing yards from week 13 to 18, and he had the 6th most designed quarterback runs during that time, only behind the names you would expect, such as Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, and Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. Now, so I know some rust is to be expected with how long he was off the field, but I typically expect to see a little less rust with guys coming back from suspension as opposed to coming back from injury. With Deshaun, he didn't have to deal with rehabbing an injury or things like that. It was just strictly being held off the field due to the suspension issues. And so you would hope that the rust wouldn't be as strong as somebody that's also having to deal with rehab, but then you also factor in that he was coming into a brand new offense as well, brand new system, that could play a part in that as well, I'm sure. So it's easy to paint the picture of a bounce back season given those variables, along with the fact that they added 2 other weapons in Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman this offseason that I really like. But once you get past the top 8 quarterbacks, I think that you can make the argument for a ton of guys to be in that 9 to 12 range to get them in as a QB1. And when it comes down to it, there's just other quarterbacks that I'd rather take a shot on.
Yeah, for me, it was, watching his game, it was a lot of that game speed stuff. He wasn't didn't have the advantage of a camp. He didn't have the advantage of, being around his teammates and doing all those kind of things when you are a suspended player. So, and you saw once he started progressing, once he started getting back into the flow, started getting the speed of the game back, especially those last 2 weeks, championship weekend, if you had Deshaun Watson on your roster, you most likely walked away with the chip, right? Because he had those last 2 weeks. I know we don't play fantasy in week 18, but those last 2 weeks, week 17, I mean, he was an absolute baller. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do with a full season, a full training camp, building chemistry with Amari Cooper, David Njoku, the guys that you said that they added in Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman. To me, I don't got it in me to put a guy like Daniel Jones above Deshaun Watson. So you're better than me there, man. You're
That's fair. That's completely fair.
But Rhett, my guy, Geno Smith didn't write back last season, but you wrote him in. He was hands down the waiver ad of the year, finishing as a QB1. Coming into 2023, he is still being drafted at a value going around the QB 17 spot, according to DLF. Now, I was the only one who kept him out of the top 12. Was last season a flash in the pan? What makes you comfortable placing him in your top 12 just based on that 1 year of production?
All right, guys. So with Geno Smith last season, it's so hard to tell what it's going to be here in 2023, but I'm going to go ahead and stick my neck out for Geno. And why am I going to do that? Because let's put it very simply. My man last season was a gunslinger with accuracy. Going to playerprofiler.com, my man was top 10 in many categories that both had to do with counting numbers and efficiency metrics. So let's go ahead and run through those. First off, top 10 in passing attempts. He was 9th with 572 passing attempts. He was 8th in deep ball attempts. He had 66 deep ball attempts. 77 red zone attempts, also top 10 in the league. They played at a good place, somewhere around the middle pack in the league, 2.112 plays per minute. So the ability to get up and down the field and run a lot of plays in a short period of time was also there for them. Ended up with 30 passing touchdowns, 4th in the league. Let's keep going. 37 money throws, 3rd in the league. Sounds all good. Now you're saying, Rhett, why wasn't Geno Smith that guy up until last year? Well, there are some red flags in this resume I'm talking about. First off, led the league in danger plays, had 46 danger plays last year. Had an astounding, this was a stat that surprised me, 41 interceptable passes led the league last year. He only ended up with like 6 interceptions, but still a lot of bad situations he put himself in. And he had 105 pressured throws, which was 5th in the league.
He was on fire, and so I don't want to let the fire burn out. But he was also playing behind the 27th best offensive line in football per PFF's end of year rankings, and yet through that he led the NFL in completion percentage at 68.9%, 4th in true completion percentage at 73.9%. 5th in deep ball completion percentages, 5th in pressure completion percentages, 3rd in clean pocket completion percentage. This dude was eating. It didn't matter if he was being pressured or not. The man was eating. Now the O-line was young last year. There were, I believe, both tackles were rookies. There's going to be some progression there. You would assume that the offensive line makes a leap this year. Hopefully gives Geno a little bit more time. And if it does, as Rhett said here, wheels up for Geno. And then quarterback 12 is probably too low. I agree with that because I got him at quarterback 10. So I do think quarterback 12 is a little too low. You factor in everything that Rhett pointed out so clearly. And then you add to that they added, in my mind, the clear best wide receiver in this draft in Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think that they might have the best trio of receivers in the league. Whenever you talk about Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, there's a lot of great duos, but that trio is really, really strong. And Geno he's an easy guy to root for on top of everything that Rhett already laid out. So I've got him in my top 10 as well, as the top 12. I love a lot of the points that Rhett laid out both before and after he was out. So yeah, I'm with Rhett on this one. Wheels up on Geno, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have him just out of my top 12. I'm excited for Geno Smith coming into the season. Like you said, they added Jackson Smith-Njigba to that wide receiver core. They also have Noah Fant there, who is a capable tight end in that system.
And they love Will Dissly.
Yeah, exactly. They got the pass blocking running backs with Zach Charbonnet there, who they also added through the draft. They picked up Kenny McIntosh, and don't forget about Kenny Walker. So it's a loaded offense that's built around a quarterback where you don't need the quarterback to be Aaron Rodgers. You don't need the quarterback to be Patrick Mahomes. You can have a guy like Geno Smith who is not only going to read the field pretty good, but he's going to get the ball to its mark. And that's shown by that completion percentage. That's all those advanced metrics there show that he is capable to move the ball in that offense. So I like it there. It was a good spot. Rhett, we lost you. Drew picked you up, brother. He got you, but he finished off Geno Smith. We're excited for Geno Smith there. Now, out of the three of us, I did not have Daniel Jones in my top 12. I had him as a top 15 QB. His rushing abilities and his fit in the scheme are going to put him in a great position to finish as a fantasy QB1 when all is said and done. But his off weeks, which happen often, are killers. With a dud week 1 of the fantasy playoffs where he scored under 10 fantasy points, you didn't get to take advantage of those next 2 weeks where he was an absolute stud for fantasy managers. Considering 46% of his fantasy scoring games came from 5 games, it's hard for me to put trust in a player like Daniel Jones. But Drew, now's the time. Sell me on Daniel Jones. You and Rhett both have him just inside of your top 12 at around QB 11.
Yeah, so my belief in Daniel Jones honestly has less to do with Daniel Jones and more to do with the coaching staff around him and what they've done to beef up the offense this offseason. So let's just start with that. Let's look at the new weapons at Daniel Jones' disposal this season. So they traded for Darren Waller, who we will be discussing during our tight end ranking shortly. So I'll let Rhett tell you why that was such a good thing later in the episode. But on top of that, they also signed Paris Campbell and Jamison Crowder. And yes, those guys do play similar roles to their second-round pick from last season, Brian Daboll's first pick as a New York Giants head coach, Wandale Robinson. But I believe this coaching staff is playing into their quarterback strengths and acquiring a bunch of talented guys that thrive in the portion of the field where DJ is most effective. And look, there's not many things that turn me on more than a coaching staff that is willing to make their scheme fit the quarterback instead of trying to make their quarterback fit whatever scheme they want to run. Like that gets me hot and bothered. So Brian Daboll, hit my line, but they also drafted field stretching wide receiver Jalen Hyatt, which should hopefully help with the fact that Daniel Jones was 35th in yards per attempt last season. So if Daniel Jones can put up a quarterback 9 finish last season with Darius Slayton and Richie James as his top 2 pass catching options, I think another top 12 season is well within the range of outcomes whenever you consider the upgrade in weapons and the fact that it's year 2 at Brian Daboll's system. And we haven't even talked about the rushing ability and the coaching staff's willingness to put that to use. Last season, Jones was fifth among quarterbacks in rushing yards and 4th in design runs. So rushing TDs aren't as predictable year to year, but he was also tied for 3rd in that category as well. So, I already said it while we were discussing Deshaun Watson, but I think that there are quite a few quarterbacks you can slot into that 9 to 12 range. And Daniel Jones for me is one that I'm more than comfortable putting in there due to what we saw last year already, the upgraded weapons, and my faith in Brian Daboll, pretty much.
No, still can't do it, man. You put up a good argument there. You put up a good argument there, but and he could very well be a back end QB1. But I got him as I think I got him as QB14 right now. A guy that can always just jump like that mix right there, 9 to 15. They're going to be so interchangeable by the time we get to August. Daniel Jones could eventually jump a guy like I have Tua at the back end. Rhett, speaking of Tua, on the other side of that, you were the only one not to have him in the top 12, considering the weapons, the offense. He's a player that I have trouble ranking myself. When you break down his stats game by game, it's not the sexiest output. But tell me why Tua is out of your current top 12 or not, Rhett. You didn't have to leave, man. I know you didn't want to talk Tua, and he was pretty excited to talk Tua.
He was, and he probably left because he just doesn't want to talk about the fact that like outside of injuries, it's hard to paint a picture of Tua not being a top 12 quarterback, right? So, but he hasn't played more than 13 games in a season, and really with him, it's one play and he might be done. Like there's reports out there that if he suffers one more concussion, his entire career might be over. But for all the reasons that Rhett and I have both said that we love Geno, Rhett is fully out there saying that he has to acknowledge that Tua has that quarterback one potential. He's number one in yards per attempt. He was number 2 in the amount of money throws, I'm assuming per PFF. He was number 1 in deep ball completion percentage, number 7 in pressured completion percentage, and 65.2% red zone completion percentage, which was also second in the league. But he was fairly inaccurate with the clean pocket, which is kind of weird. It's the opposite of what you would expect from the elite quarterback. So it's fair to be concerned about Tua. And his catchable pass rates are also alarming, as Rhett pointed out in our notes. He was 40% from deep, 33rd in the league, 36.5% pressure, 32nd in the league, 42.5% catchable pass rate, 56. So what are these stats telling us? I agree with what Rhett's saying here, that Tyreek and Waddle bailed him out on a regular basis. And that's very fair to say. Tyreek and Waddle would bail a lot of quarterbacks out in the league with their game-breaking ability. Now, does this completely doom Tua? I don't think it does, and neither does Rhett. But it does put caution around him between that and the injuries, making him leery, at least for Rhett, as a top 12 quarterback in 2023. Now, you and I both barely have him, on the edge in top 12. I believe we both have him at 12. So, I think in one quarterback leagues, if you're waiting on quarterback, there's worse that you can do as far as Tua goes. Now, in super flex leagues, if you're waiting on quarterback and super flex redraft, you're grabbing Tua as your QB1. That might be a little too risky. But as far as your QB2 in super flex for next season, someone where you can invest in a third quarterback a little bit earlier than others might want to, just to protect yourself from that injury. If Tua hits, he could end up paying off big dividends just because of, like, might be Daniel, that offense, the weapons that they have there in place. There's a lot of good things going for Tua, assuming he can stay healthy, as Rhett painted out for us. I think that he did a good job pointing out the concerns with Tua there.
Yeah, a lot of the inaccuracies with Tua's game that you might not see in the box score that Drew pointed out with Rhett's notes. So I'd love to hear it. Rhett, you're back. Any final words on Tua before we jump to their top 6?
Oh, listen, I'm just appreciative of Drew actually being able to bail me out in this situation. We're calling the audible. We're working from the phone now. We'll see what happens.
Omaha.
All right, then. Those were the bottom 6. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here. Let's jump into the QBs that have all the opportunity to finish as the QB1. I'll roll first here. My number 6 quarterback, Justin Herbert. Number 5, I got Joe Burrow. At number 4, I got Lamar Jackson. 3, Jalen Hurts. 2, Josh Allen. And 1, Patrick Mahomes. That's my top 6 quarterbacks there. Rhett, you want to give us yours?
Yeah, man. QB6, I have Justin Herbert. QB5, Joe Burrow of the LSU Tigers. QB4, Lamar Jackson. QB3, Josh Allen. QB2, Jalen Hurts. And number one, no surprises, no shocks at all. Patrick Mahomes, he is just that dude.
He definitely is. And he's that dude being able to do it with guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, I mean, Travis Kelce's there, but outside of that, there was Juju, who I think had just under 1,000 yards. But Drew, give me your top 6 QBs, man.
It really is mind-blowing to think about what Mahomes has done, giving the non-Kelsey patch catchers that he's had. Like, the dude is unreal.
It's bananas.
So at QB6, I've got Joe Burrow. QB5, I've got Justin Fields. QB4, Lamar Jackson. And then the consensus top 3, just in different orders, I've got Josh Allen at 3, the aforementioned Patrick Mahomes at 2, and then I do have Jalen Hurts as QB1.
Love it. I love to see it. Drew, we gotta talk about Jalen Hurts at 1, man. You're the only one to list them as your overall QB1, considering his low pass touchdown numbers compared to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, both above 30 touchdowns. What are your projections for Hurts' 2023 season that'll get him above those two guys?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons I don't have a problem with putting him there and betting on Jalen Hurts. So reason number 1, he's always gotten better year over year, going back to his college days. He just continues to improve. And then reason number 2, he's already kind of done it. I approach redraft as a weekly game, and so I prefer to look at points per game instead of season totals. And if you look at the fantasy points per game leaders from weeks 1 to 17 last season, which is the fantasy weeks we care about, your quarterback 1 would have been Jalen Hurts at 26.8 points per game, 1 more point per game than Patrick Mahomes. And so even with continued improvement, I'm not crazy. I don't think he's going to become a Patrick Mahomes level passer, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that his passing touchdowns could increase from the 22 where it was at last year to the 30 area, given how talented he is and how talented his pass catchers are as well. So, efficiency wise, he was off the charts. He was 8th in yards per attempt, 2nd in fantasy points per dropback, 10th in true completion percentage, and 8th in deep ball completion percentages. And the only area he wasn't that great in was throwing the ball under pressure, which thankfully for him and for us, we don't have to worry about that often with how talented the Eagles offensive line is. So one thing I know that won't be going away is the rushing upside. And last year among quarterbacks, Hurts was 1st in carries and carries per game, 1st in red zone carries and red zone carries per game. And he was also at 4th in rushing yards and 1st in design runs for the quarterback. So you can point to the Eagles losing Shane Steichen as their offensive coordinator, which is fair. But with the Eagles promoting their former quarterback coach Brian Johnson as a new OC, I think we can expect the offense to look pretty similar to what it did last season, and I expect Hurts to just continue to get better.
Yeah, a lot of good points there for Jalen Hurts to be that potential QB1. Now, on top of that, with the schedule release, the Philadelphia Eagles have the projected, based on last year's winning totals, they have the projected hardest schedule amongst all the teams. Does that factor too much into your rankings at all?
Honestly, I think that might almost make me happy because there were so many instances last season where they would go off in the first half and then just kind of coast in the second half because they were blowing so many teams out, maybe with harder opponents, a harder schedule. Maybe there's the opportunity there for more fantasy points that were left on the board because they were just coasting their way to victories and handing the ball to Miles Sanders over and over. So that might make me feel a little bit better about Jalen Hurts, if anything.
Love to hear it. Rhett, are you with us? Rhett, welcome back.
There
brother.
he is.
He's back.
Baby.
There's the guy.
Surprise, surprise. What's up?
Let's talk football. Let's get you talking some football, brother. Let's get you going. Mahomes, Allen, and from what Drew just told us, Jalen Hurts will all be jockeying for that QB1 overall spot in the 2023 season. Out of the QBs that you have ranked 4 to 6, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert, which of the 3 guys could have the best shot at jumping up and finishing as the overall QB1?
Dude, among those 3, can it be anybody other than former league MVP? The only one among those 3 with that on his resume in Lamar Jackson. Ladies, listen, the bag is secured and there are no more excuses for Lamar. Let's start it off. In the past, he's had this OC thing with Wink Martindale or whoever it was. Big upgrade with Todd Monken, who is going to let them boys fly. Better weapons at wide receiver. We have Odell Beckham Jr. added. Zay Flowers added in the draft. Rashad Bateman still hanging back in the cut, hoping to come out and emerge like we all expected him to. And among those three, far and away, nobody has more upside rushing than Lamar does. Despite the time he missed last year when he played only 12 games, Lamar Jackson had 764 rushing yards, third in the NFL on 9 carries a game, also third in the NFL among quarterbacks. 112 carries, fifth among quarterbacks. Once again, in 12 games, averaged 67.3 rushing yards per game, which was second among quarterbacks behind, you guessed it, Justin Fields. So, what am I saying? Do those rushing numbers come down this year? They probably will because of this presumably more active passing game. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I do expect him to have better passing numbers that'll be closer to his MVP season. And also a J.K. Dobbins breakout may help him out as well and take some pressure off of him. I'm seeing Dobbins as a potential RB1 this season. So therefore, if you're looking for a potential QB1, due to rushing upside and the fact that the passing will likely be more efficient, I would say roll with Lamar Jackson and possibly roll with confidence in that situation.
Yeah, and out of the 6 you have ranked there, you're probably getting Lamar Jackson at the best value if you put him up against Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and the 3 top guys there. So I agree with that. Lamar Jackson has probably the best potential to finish as that QB1. Now, Rhett, some leagues are pivoting towards 6-point passing touchdown. Would that change your mind at all between the 3?
Okay, in that case, you probably have to lean a little bit more Joe Burrow because first off, if you're looking at it, Jamar Chase, come on. His 2 and 3 are T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, both of whom are comprising one of the 3 best receiving cores in the league. And on top of that, you're talking about guys in the tight ends, Drew Sample, and I know they was it Irv Smith they added this offseason? Yeah. Irv is one of these guys who's been a sleeping giant in terms of pass production. You put him in with a Joe Burrow, man, anything could happen. So in that situation, if you're talking about 6 points per TD, I think you probably have to lean a little bit more towards Joe Burrow in that situation. But still, the gap might be closer than you would think between him and Lamar.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Justin Fields in the top 5 for you, Drew, the only one that has him in the top 5 between the 3 of us, has me excited for all my Justin Fields shares. But him going there means you see him making a jump in production of his passing game, something where he ranked at the bottom of most of the statistical categories last year. QB 27 in attempts, QB 26 in passing yards, QB 16 in passing TDs. What is it that you see that has you ranking him so high?
So let me just start this by saying that I believe in Justin Fields as the player, and I do think he will make improvements in his passing games. However, with the rushing numbers he's capable of putting up, he doesn't really have to make that much of a leap to be a top 5 quarterback for fantasy. Last year with those horrible passing numbers that you just mentioned, he was still already a top 5 quarterback in points per game. So now I'm not someone that believes that DJ Moore to this Bears offense is the same thing as Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs or Jalen Hurts getting A.J. Brown. I don't think that we're talking equals here, but I do know that DJ Moore is a extremely talented receiver and a clear upgrade to what Fields had to work with last year. Now, talking about what Fields had to work with last year, he also lost what seemed to be his favorite target up to that point in the season whenever Darnell Mooney went out for the season in Week 12. I think he played like 30% of snaps before he got injured. Week 12 was out for the rest of the year. And after acquiring Chase Claypool in the middle of the season, he also missed time from weeks 13 to 16. So getting to develop a better rapport with him should also be helpful. And whenever you look at a healthy DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and Chase Claypool, that should be a lot better passing options than what Fields had to work with at any point last year. And that's without mentioning tight end Cole Kmet or 4th round draft pick Tyler Scott. So once you factor in the progression of him as a passer that I think that we'll see, the upgrade in weapons, I like betting on Justin Fields as a top 5 quarterback for next season.
Yeah, the news coming out of the Chicago Bears front office the leader that Justin Fields has been turning into is something that I'm excited for. He's taking control of that room. He's taking control of his situation. He's working out with the wide receivers that are around him. So I definitely see, I'm definitely buying into the fact that Justin Fields could finish as a top 5 fantasy QB. Okay, fellas, before we dive into the exciting world of fantasy tight ends, those are our top 12 QBs. Let's play a little this or that with the quarterbacks. I'm going to give you a couple QB names, and you just tell me which one you'd rather have here, okay? For the sake of time, we're going to keep it short. So just give me the name. You got it? You guys ready to play?
Let's do it.
All right, Rhett. We'll start with you. Derek Carr or Russell Wilson?
Broncos country. Let's ride.
I'd love to hear it. Drew, Mac Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo?
This is so gross, man. If I can't say neither, just give me Jimmy G and the weapons he's got at his disposal.
I like it there. Aaron Rodgers or Jared Goff?
Like the weapons, Aaron Rodgers.
Love it. Drew, a quarterback that none of us have ranked, which seems almost criminal. Kyler Murray or Geno Smith?
If you could tell me that Kyler Murray was going to play week 1, this might be a discussion. But until then, give me Geno.
Yeah, I like it there. Rhett, battle of the rookie QBs, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud?
Oof, that's tough. CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I'm a big CJ Stroud guy, so I love that. And finally, Drew, Anthony Richardson or your boy Daniel Jones?
You did this on purpose. I know what you did.
I definitely did.
You ain't slick. Look, if you could tell me Anthony Richardson was going to start from day one, it might be a tough discussion. But I've already told you guys why I like Daniel Jones. Give me the safe option. I'll take DJ at this spot.
I like it. There you have it, our top 12 QBs for the 2023 redraft season. A list that is sure to change from now until the season start. Make sure you hop onto our Twitter to see those lists posted after the episode. And if you are on Twitter, hop over to the YouTube and drop some comments in the live chat. If you can please like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and rate and review the podcast. Helping us ultimately helps you. We appreciate all the support we've been getting from the community since the 3 of us have taken on the 4th and Frame show with the Fantasy and Frames Network. And we have to extend a special amount of gratitude to everyone within the Fantasy and Frames team. We are excited to be on this network. Any questions we have, they've been happy to answer, sharing their processes from the people at the Dynasty 365 shows, Shoot the Gap. I've hopped on the Best Ball Mania show there that Stacy and Stephanie are running. So we are happy to be part of this giant family. But now let's get into tight ends, a position often referred to as the wasteland outside of maybe the top 3 to 5 guys. But let's discuss our bottom 6 guys that could ultimately break their way into the top 6, benefiting players that wait on taking a tight end until late of their drafts. I'll roll first at 12, Cole Kmet, 11, Pat Freiermuth, 10, David Njoku, 9, Chigozie Okonkwo, 8, Evan Ingram, and 7, Darren Waller. Rhett, what do you got?
12, Dalton Schultz. 11, my man Chiggy Okonkwo. 10, David Njoku. Tight end 9, Pat Freiermuth. 8, Evan Ingram. 7, Dallas Goedert. Love Dallas.
Sexy. Drew, give me your bottom 6.
So at tight end 12, I also have Dalton Schultz. I've got Evan Ingram at tight end 11, Pat Freiermuth at tight end 10. I got Chig at tight end 9, David Njoku at tight end 8, and then Darren Waller at tight end 7, similar to you, Chris.
Yeah, another sexy group of tight ends. Now, Drew, which tight end on the outside of your top 6 do you think has the best chance to hop in and threaten one of your top 6? So which tight end in this group of 6 here do you think has a shot to hop in there?
Yeah, so in full transparency, my answer would have been the same as Rhett's, but he got into the show sheet first. So I'll pivot to probably the easy answer. The guy that's just out of my top 6, my tight end 7, and that's Darren Waller. So I know Rhett's also going to be talking about Darren Waller later. I don't want to steal his shine. I don't want to take away any time from him and his boys. So I'll just say this, that whenever I'm looking for tight ends that could possibly finish inside the top 5, beyond those, obvious elite talent guys, I'm looking for tight ends that could possibly finish second at worst in targets on their own team. And so whenever you talk about Chig, whenever you talk about Darren Waller, I think that they both have a chance to be second on their team, if not first in targets. So those are the guys, once you get beyond the top 6, that I'm targeting.
Yeah, Darren Waller's my pick for the guys inside my bottom 6. Rhett, what about you?
My guy is Chig, and here's why. I mean, if you're looking at this Tennessee wide receiver room, you can make a strong case that he's the most productive returning player among pass catchers there. And I know he wasn't a full-time starter last year, but if we project out his numbers that he put up last year as a full season starter, things would be looking pretty good for him. In terms of targets last year, didn't get that many. This year, I'm expecting probably somewhere in that 90 to 100 area. But if we were just doing that basic math of doubling up the targets and giving him the counting stats based off of doubling up his targets and doing roughly double, if we were to do that, Chig would have had 64 catches, 900 yards, and 6 touchdowns last season. In a half PPR situation, that would have been approximately 168 fantasy points. And in my hypothetical we're running through right now, that would have put him as tight end 4 for the season. So Ryan Tannehill liked him as the year went on. We saw that he emerged more and more. And if they move to Fourth and Frame's favorite quarterback, Will Levis, you can assume that they're going to be a safer offense for a little bit, which means more tight end work, more safety nets. You're looking at a guy that didn't run more than 21 routes in any game last year, a guy whose season high snap share was 56.1% in week 15, yet still managed 4 tight end 1 weeks despite that limited role. So I love a guy like Dallas Goedert. Love him to death. Always love the skill set, but not much has changed for him situation-wise. Evan Ingram's target share is likely getting worse. Njoku is intriguing, but there's some decent pass-catching talent in Cleveland. So by that process of elimination, guys you can see raise up and have a good year, it's probably going to be Chig for me.
Yeah, a big breakout candidate going into the 2023 season. Chig, we'll shorten his name for my own benefit because trying to pronounce that name can get a little tricky. Now, Drew, considering you have Justin Fields slotted in as a top 5 QB, projecting him to develop more as a passer, you have Cole Kmet out of your top 12. You both do. But what is it about Kmet that concerns you, considering he was a top 10 tight end in target share, snap share, route participation, and deep targets last season?
So to be fair, he is my tight end 13, so he's just outside of it. But
Just a bit outside.
he's just a bit outside, but he is still outside. And a lot of it goes back to what I said earlier about reasons why I love Fields, as well as what I look for at the tight end position. It all kind of ties in together. So I try to find guys that I think have a good shot at being the second option in their team's passing offense. And with DJ Moore, a healthy Darnell Mooney, maybe more rapport with Chase Claypool, I'm not as confident in that outcome for Cole Kmet. And these additions are great for Fields, but not so much for the tight end, who was still barely top 15 at the position last year on a points per game basis, even without the competition for targets that he's going to see this year. You know, he was top 10 in target share and snap share and route participation, and that was without DJ Moore. That was without a healthy Darnell Mooney down the stretch. That was without a healthy Chase Claypool for the majority of what they traded him for last year. So with him not really being able to produce, even with the lack of targets, I have a hard time painting a picture of him producing, given what I expect from an improved Chicago Bears pass catching room. So I like it a lot for Justin Fields. For Cole Kmet, not so much.
Yeah, it's the bottom group of tight ends, like 9 to 15, is just so icky. It's just so
it is. It's gross.
It doesn't leave you feeling good when you're ranking these guys.
Right.
That's the bottom 6. A lot of variables between the three of us. Now let's get into why we are all here. The top 6 tight ends. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the best tight end of them all? And for all 3 of us, it's the king himself, Travis Kelce. But going down the list at 6, I got Dallas Goedert. 5, Kyle Pitts. At 4, I got George Kittle. 3, TJ Hawkinson. 2, Mark Andrews. And of course, he's got the crown, as you can see in the graphic. It's Travis Kelce. Rhett, what are your top 6?
All right, hot take alert, baby. Let's go. Tight end 6, TJ Hawkinson. Tight end 5, Kyle Pitts. Tight end 4, George Kittle. Tight end 3, let's talk about it. I'm ready to roll
Woo!
off Darren Waller. Tight end 2,
Cuckoo,
Mark
ka-choo.
Andrews. And, of course, the king. You come at the king, you best not miss King Kelsey, tight end 1.
I love it. Drew, what do you got?
Yeah, so at tight end 6, I have George Kittle. Tight end 5, I have Dallas Goedert. Tight end 4, I have my king, Kyle Pitts. Tight end 3, TJ Hawkinson. Tight end 2, Mark Andrews. And the tight end 1, everybody's king, Travis
Yeah.
Kelce.
He'll be king until he's out of the game. But,
Yep.
Rhett,
Yep.
of the 6 you have listed here, which tight end do you think can conquer Mount Kelsey and be crowned as the fantasy tight end 1?
All right, baby, let's have some fun. Let's keep it short. Let's keep it
it.
sweet. Let's keep it to the point. Because you asked me this question originally about who is going to potentially break into the top 6. But I'm here to tell you tonight that I believe Darren Waller was added to the New York Giants roster to be their Travis Kelce, and therefore was a strong play to finish as tight end 1 this season. Original question, Chris Battister, you were saying, yeah, only 65 tight end targets last year. But let me flip a question on you and let me ask you this question. Is there any pass catcher on the Giants roster that is the athlete or the proven commodity that Darren Waller is? Yes or no?
No.
All right, fair enough. So let's run through it. When he's healthy, he dominates. 2019 breakout season, 117 targets, 90 catches, 1,146 yards. Only 3 touchdowns, but big-time production. 2020, 145 targets, 107 catches, 1,196 yards, 9 touchdowns. 2021, despite missing 5 games, was on pace for 80 receptions and 965 yards. So, is he in a new offense with Brian Daboll? Absolutely. But when he played only 9 games last year, Darren Waller was the top among tight ends in deep targets with 13 deep targets. Had the number 1 ADOT, average depth of target, 13.6. Despite missing all those games, was still top 15 in red zone targets. He had 10 of them. He was number 2 in yards per reception, 13.9. Chris, one more question for you. Actually, let's run it to Drew. Drew, can you tell me who the target leader in New York was last season?
Was it Richie James?
It was Saquon Barkley with 76 targets.
Oh, not the running back.
The running back, bub. So listen, despite only playing 9 games last year, Darren Waller and his only 43 targets would have been 4th on that team in targets and receptions. So here's the case I'm making. Was it icky in New York last year? Absolutely. But you can't trade for a dog and not let him eat is what I'm saying. Yes.
Facts.
We're talking about overtaking Travis Kelce, and that is a big ask. And it would take a superhuman year from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the opportunity is going to be there for Darren Waller. Therefore, sign me up for the hot take. Put it in ink. Let's roll with it.
Love to see it. Are we going to get a Darren Waller tight end 1 tattoo, Rhett? You're not that confident, eh?
Oh, listen, henna.
And
the tattoo. There you go.
Ink it in henna, baby.
I love it. I agree with a lot of what you're saying about Darren Waller, the player, but the situation in the Giants, man, it doesn't got me feeling warm and fuzzy inside, considering that they were last in total tight end targets last season. I think with only 65 of those targets going to the tight end. So he's got an uphill battle, but like you said, you don't trade for a dog and not let him eat, brother. Well said. That's there. Right. I love it. But the guy that we all have as our consensus tight end 2 in Mark Andrews, Drew, I have to ask you, with the addition of Zay Flowers, OBJ, Nelson Aguilar, and in Antonio Brown's world, Antonio Brown, while also considering some of his best production came when Tyler Huntley was under center. Are we all too high on Mark Andrews?
So I think that absolutely could be the case. And honestly, I think there are like 6 tight ends, Mark Andrews included, that you can make an argument for as the tight end 2 this season. So you could also make an argument against all of them as well. So as you mentioned, you already talked about the knocks on Andrews. So let's talk about some of the other guys that we have in our top 6 that could be in the running for the tight end 2. So TJ Hawkinson, he was the tight end 2 on the season from the point that he got traded in Minnesota in week 8 through the end of the season. Now, they also just spent a first round pick on Jordan Addison. So there's at least a chance that Hawkinson ends up as the 3rd target in that Minnesota offense with Jordan Addison coming in. Kyle Pitts, he's still the same player that we all love so much, myself, but I'll never quit you, Kyle Pitts. He's still that guy. He's still that guy that put in the best fantasy season of any rookie tight end in NFL history. And if someone could look into the future and they could tell me that Desmond Ridder was just going to be good, not even great, I don't need him to be great, just be good, I would place bets on Kyle Pitts being the tight end 2 and the person with the best chance to top Kelsey as the tight end 1. But with that being said, quarterback play is still the main question mark for me. Marcus Mariota was the worst quarterback in the league in terms of level of bad last year. So just an upgrade to a good quarterback could make all the difference. Kyle Pitts ranked 8th in targets per game at the tight end position, but ranked just 19th in catchable targets per game. Now, there's also the concern that Arthur Smith loves to run the ball, and they just took Bijan with the top 10 draft pick. So, the pie in the passing game still might not be big enough for both London and Pitts to be serviceable on a consistent basis. So that's the concern with Kyle Pitts, who is my favorite choice. If we're talking about guys to unseat Travis Kelce, that would be my favorite. But Dallas Goedert is another one who's in one of the best offenses in the NFL, and he'll be catching passes from the guy that I just made the case for the quarterback 1 overall for fantasy purposes next season. However, I believe his ceiling is being the 3rd option in this offense behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So he would need one of those 2 guys to miss significant time to get into that tight end 2 overall area, in my opinion. And then George Kittle, he might be the best complete tight end in the NFL whenever you consider pass catching and blocking, although Kelsey's blocking has gotten better over the years. But however, being as good of a blocker as Kittle is can come at a price, as he was 12th among tight ends last year in routes per game. Combine that with the question marks at quarterback last year, although, again, similar to Kyle Pitts, I'll never quit Trey Lance. But the competition for targets with CMC, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, that's all there, and it's easy to find reasons to be worried about Kittle. And then there's the last guy in this tier, which for me would be Darren Waller, who has shown that he can be an elite fantasy tight end asset before. However, pass catchers at Darren Waller's age always seem immediate access on a new team. It's a little bit of a struggle. So him being the number 1 target for Daniel Jones is in this offense, and a huge fantasy season, as Rhett already detailed, is within the realm of possibilities. But there's also the realm of possibilities where he struggles, being put into a new offense at this point in his career. So basically, I think you should just draft Travis Kelce every year. Yep. Like at this point, I've given up on trying to be the person that correctly identifies when Kelsey's going to fall off. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at this point if Kelce was he just had a great year every year until he decided to hang it up and go out on top. I thought that the age 30 threshold would be something to be worried about with Kelce. And since that point, he's gone on to give us 2 more tight end 1 seasons and then another tight end 2 season, whenever Mark Andrew finished as tight end 1, since he hit that age 30 mark. So if you want to try to be the one to guess whenever Kelce falls off, be my guest. I'm good. I'm not going to do that. So just draft Travis Kelce.
That's it. Just draft Travis Kelce and don't look back. He's easy.
The
definition of plug and play. The definition of plug and play at the position.
And no one will ever challenge you for him either. He's going at a value as always.
Yeah, exactly. There you have it. Our top 12 quarterbacks, our top 12 tight ends. Before we leave you, we did it at the top with the quarterbacks. We're going to play a little this or that with the tight ends. Rhett, same situation. I'm going to give you 2 names. Just tell me which one you would rather have for the 2023 fantasy season. Greg Dulcich or Noah Fant?
Reluctantly Noah Fant, because Greg Dulcich is in a new situation with Sean Payton and we don't really know.
Love it. Drew, Juwan Johnson or Tyler Higbee?
Thank you for reminding me how disgusting the tight end position
Hey,
is.
last game is bad, brother.
Just give me Jawan Johnson just because I don't have any strong feelings about either one of these guys, but I think that Derek Carr, he's made good use of Darren Waller. Maybe he could do the same for Jawan Johnson.
All right, Rhett, NFC North tight ends, Sam Laporta or Cole Kmet?
Great reports coming out about Laporta, but he is still a year one tight end. Those always tend to struggle. And Kmet had 7 touchdowns last season. So even if he is touchdown dependent, give me Cole Kmet.
Love it. Drew, another set of absolute banger tight ends. Gerald Everett or Mike Gesicki?
Yeah, I feel bad for our listeners at this point. Like, I hope you're not making this decision because I wouldn't want to. I mean, give me the guy that's attached to the better quarterback. Give me Gerald Everett. It's tough to know what New England's doing. Maybe Mac Jones takes that lead with Bill O'Brien as at least they have an offensive guy making offensive play calls as opposed to last year whenever they had Matt Patricia making those calls. But give me Gerald Everett and just a slight beat him out.
All right, Rhett, Trey McBride or Kate Otten?
Gross. Give me Mike Gesicki's gritty and then Trey McBride.
Love it. Last one for you, Drew. Dawson Knox or Taysom Hill?
You did this on purpose again because you
Another
know
one,
how
yes,
I
sir.
feel about Taysom Hill. Look,
I know my audience.
The answer is always not Taysom Hill. So even though Dawson Knox might not even be the tight end one in his own team, give me Dawson Knox. Hopefully he catches a few tutties from Josh Allen. We can keep it moving because I'm not picking Taysom Hill no matter what.
That's it. Thank you for tuning into Fourth and Frames. I'm Chris Battistel, and I've had the pleasure of being joined by my co-hosts Rhett Manuel at R Manuel Sports and Drew Scott at Drew3MR, both on Twitter. We appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to watch or listen. That's it for us. Don't forget to tune in next week where we have ESPN's Eric Moody joining us. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay ahead of the game. Toodles.